I was recently realizing that I miss the feeling of going online and buying a piece of software and getting a registration key emailed to me. One of the first examples of this in my life was when I actually purchased GameMaker 6, and I still have that email that I got. If I recall correctly, it took about an hour or so for it to come through, and I was so excited the whole time. So this is a really kind of dumb tutorial. So we're actually not going to start off in GameMaker. We're going to start off in PHP on my web server. Now, I know that not everybody has a web server just laying around that they can use and code with, and not everybody has a ton of PHP or even HTML experience, but maybe you do from back when you used to make your MySpace profile the envy of everyone in your school. So if you don't have a web server handy, there is a great tool that I would recommend called Xampp. And Xampp is free. It's technically a mini web server that you can run on your computer. You can also, I have a project called Very Simple Web Server, which is written in GameMaker, and you can download this and use it. You will have to set up PHP with it if you want to use what we're doing today. But Xampp is really great. Everything that you need to learn PHP or to learn how to use databases and everything comes with it, and it's very easy to just set up and go. So we're going to start off with HTML and PHP. I'm using Notepad++ to edit my code today, but there are a ton of awesome code editors. I prefer Notepad++ actually, but it's up to you what you use. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a page on our web server called keycreate.php, and this is actually just an HTML page, and you probably already see what it does. So this is a form, and it just takes a username or a full name, and you submit it. So, and there's a submit button. What we're going to end up with from this code right here. And if you want to use this technique in an actual setting, this is something that you would put after a paywall or in the registration process. So we're just going to tell the form that when the action is happening, it's going to go to keygen.php, which we have up here and we can take a look at in a minute. And it's going to post that information. So there are two different types of actions. There's get and there's post. Get is something that you actually see a lot, usually on Facebook or something like that. So with Facebook, it's facebook.com/whatever profile equals some random numbers, and Facebook uses these incredibly long URLs that use all of these functions. So this entire thing is a get technically, but when a lot of people talk about gets, they're talking about this type of stuff here. So they're essentially variables that are encoded in the URL. The other method, post, which is right here and what we're using, is invisible to just the naked eye. You can capture these requests pretty easily, but essentially we're saying, we're sending this form data to keygen.php, and the browser will just kind of push it behind the scenes in the request data. So keygen.php, this is how we actually generate our key for the software. With this setup, we only get one piece of information from the user, which is what their username is going to be. As I mentioned, this could be a full name, this could be a bunch of numbers, it could be really anything. In this case, it doesn't matter that you're not sanitizing things. I mean, I say that with a huge asterisk. Usually if you were entering this into a database, you would want to make sure that you're stripping out characters to make sure that the user input is not messing with anything that you are saving. We also have a secret key. So in this case, this is a very creative secret key. So this is something that the server only knows. The user does not have this at all. And on top of that, the user can't access this unless they were to hack into your server. Then all this script does is it creates a user key, or a temporary user key, by adding the name and secret key together. So I'll just make an example here. This would look something like with my name. It would look like Brian, and then with this at the end. And then we're going to hash it, and we're actually just going to use an MD5 hash. There are a ton of different hashing algorithms out there. MD5 is not the best, but it is pretty short, and for our purpose today, it's very useful and it's very quick. So we're just generating the user key to MD5, and that is reported down here in a table. So if we actually go to this website, let's say we do want to, we'll use my full name. So now we have our registered to, and we have our key, and we'll just store this over here for a minute. And I am going to show you the third script, and this is a script that we can't see. So this is the validation page. And this is what GameMaker is going to interface with to make sure that the keys that are being entered to the program are actually valid. So in this case, we are using gets. So we can actually test this pretty easily. So we're going to go valid.php and name equals Brian LeClaire and key equals, and we can come back here. We can grab the key, and it tells us that the key is valid. Now, if you were to change anything about this, let's make the b lowercase here. Suddenly, that key is invalid. So we're going to use these two variables to be able to determine whether or not the key is valid based on the server, on what the server is saying. And it lists out by echoing, so this essentially prints out to your screen, if the key equals the user key that's been reported, then it's valid. If it doesn't, it's invalid. So at this point, we can actually come over to GameMaker. So all it's asking for at the start of the game is your name, and then also the copy of your registration key that's been given to you. In a lot of cases, we'll go over this. In a lot of cases, you're going to want to save this information, maybe in an ini file or in some different format, and only check it every once in a while rather than on every program startup. But this is an example here. And then once we have that information, we're actually going to create that get again that we just did in the browser. So, valid name equals name that you typed in, and key equals key. And then this HTTP get request sends that along, and it's going to report back to us what it receives from the web server. And we get that in the async HTTP event. So async load result will give us the actual string of what's been returned, and then save it into received. And then we're just going to check received for whether or not it's valid. And the reason we would want to do this is because, there could be, and you can add in checks for this sort of stuff. If you're not connected to the internet, it's not going to return valid. If you're not, if the key is incorrect, it's not going to return valid. If the key is incorrect, it will return invalid. But that's not the case for every situation that could occur. So with that, we can actually check this out and see if it works. So we'll pull up again the key that we generated, and we'll just grab my name, copy it in there, our registration key. Cool, the key's valid, software is registered, you're all done. We can also, of course, see what happens when the key is incorrect. So we'll leave out a portion of my name, and we'll copy in that same registration key. The key's not valid. So there you go. Very, very simple web-activated keys for your game or application. This is not something that I'd recommend doing, but I just wanted to see if it was possible. It also is worth noting that a lot of old software, especially like GameMaker 6 is a good example. StarCraft is a good example. Plenty of old games are good examples. They actually so they generate the key essentially exactly like we talked about. Sometimes they add in things like, every 4 characters you want a dash or something like that, or you want to convert all of the letters to a numerical counterpart. So A would equal 1, etc. To make things look pretty and to kind of conceal what it actually is behind the screen. All of that in those old programs that I mentioned is done in the actual program, not by checking online. So GameMaker does have MD5 functions, so you can actually convert this valid script into GML pretty easily and double check to make sure that the key that the user is entering is correct. you would want to do a ton of things. First of all, make the process a little bit more intense. And you would also want to make sure that you compile your project with the Yo-Yo compiler rather than putting it in a VM, because it's very easy to find things like the secret key in a VM project. All right, that's it. If you enjoyed it, we can definitely take a trip down accounts that you create on the internet and logging into those. That's something that I've been interested in doing for a while. Very easy. But yeah, till next time.